Okay, evidence-based practices means that when we're teaching kids, whether they're in the gen ed setting, whether they're in the special education setting, we need to be using research to teach them better. We don't just say, "Oh, I saw this on this website and I thought it would be cool to do all the time." Okay, well, maybe for special occasions, like for example, like Christmas, we have special occasions where, yeah, we can do a fun art project, of course. But we can't just be teaching kids on the fly of our pants. We can't just be making things up. We have to have it grounded within research. And with that being said, with the population of autism that I work with, there are 27 evidence-based practices that you can use. Some people are very, very rigid about saying you will use this particular method to teach this kid. Well, maybe. Again, I think that we have to look at the functionality. We have to look at functional skills for kids. What do we not only want them to learn in the classroom, but what do we want them to learn in life? And that's why I love evidence-based practices. It's one of my, frankly, it's one of my passions. I love a couple of evidence-based practices, and I'm going to highlight these to you a little bit later in the presentation. But I'm not necessarily telling you that they're a solve-all for everything, because it really is a data-driven decision. If it's not data-driven, then again, it's nothing more than whatever website you pulled this information from that you just thought would be a good idea. And a teacher is going on and on and on teaching things that are not data-driven. No, the reason that we have the data in place is so it does help us make better decisions and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So going on to the next part of our presentation, asking questions. This goes back into your parent rights. You have the right to ask questions to the school and to the teacher about what type of methodologies they're using. You have the right to know about the research behind that. For example, in my classroom, I love sharing the, and I have a lot of help too with this. It's not just me. My social worker is absolutely amazing. We have a really great autism resource center that is here in Las Cruces, and it's also on Facebook. So if you want access to that information, add me on Facebook and feel free to ask. But if you want to join that community, but yeah, you have the right to ask questions, and that goes into visual aids. So for example, if you have a child that has a really hard time understanding sense of time, has a hard time understanding what to do, has a really hard time understanding how to do it. Visual schedules is one of those evidence-based practices that cures up a lot of issues. So hopefully we don't have to go on to something a little bit more intensive like a behavior intervention plan or a functional assessment or functional behavioral assessment. Again, I'm not saying that those are bad practices, because they're not. Behavior intervention plans and functional behavioral assessments are evidence-based themselves. So again, when we're looking at evidence-based practices, it depends upon what is right for the kid. And that really kind of circumvents around everything that we've been kind of talking about, whether it's creating a strong foundation with your child's teacher, with your child's school, or whether it's kind of looking at some of these type of methodologies that you may want to be able to try that you think would be successful for your kid, but may not necessarily be able to be done. Again, visual aids, visual schedules can be done. They're very simple. You don't even need them in color. And if you don't even have a laminator, I've seen a lot of people use whatchamacallit, the packaging tape. People use packaging tape. I actually gave some laminate that I bought from Walmart, a little stack of laminate at Walmart. It's roughly about I think it's $10 for 50 sheets. So it's a pretty decent amount. And that's for the off-brand. It's like in a little blue package. Not saying that I'm advertising for that one, but it's just the one that I use because it's cheap and it works. If you're going to be using that type of laminate and you don't want to buy the $20 laminator, you don't need to. You can get an ironing board and an iron. It will come out a little crinkly. I will be honest with you. It's not going to be picture perfect, but it's going to be functional. Again, the word that I'm constantly going to be stressing to you is function, function, function. Is this functional? Because we can have things that are beautiful all day, but art is beautiful. Whether or not it's necessarily functional for our lives, well, I guess that kind of depends upon who's looking at the art. But I know that you could give me, a $10,000 Picasso to put in my living room and I may like it. But if I need to be able to fix my car and I don't have any money, that Picasso is suddenly going to find a new function. I'm probably going to sell it so I can be able to buy a new car. And that's really what I'm trying to stress to you, is making sure that this is functional. So going on to another visual aid that is great that I use is SEG Charts. It breaks down the issue of, okay, I'm now here, what do I have to do first? And first I have to work, then I get to do something fun. So in this situation, it's playing with some figurines, some action figures. And going on to reinforcement. Reinforcement is big. And depending upon your familiarity, depends upon how fluent you are. To me, reinforcement in itself is almost like a language because you have to be able to be fluent with it and how you use it. So I chose this picture that I drew with all my little animals, where we have our little autism giraffe hiding in the back, and we have our monkey who got first place. Well, being first place is great for some people, but it's absolutely torturous for others, such as our little giraffe here. In fact, for other people, he's only doing this in order to basically please us. He feels kind of forced to do this. So I'm glad that he showed up and he's doing that. That's great. But it's not necessarily something that he enjoys. So again, looking at reinforcement, it has to be something that the child or the learner enjoys and not necessarily something that you enjoy, something that you are assuming that they're going to enjoy. So for example, if a kid likes sweets and we know that he will work for gummy bears, and you say, well, I don't believe he's going to get candy. I believe he needs healthy food. I see that he eats apples. I'm only going to offer him apples. Okay, I've actually had that situation come up before. Yes, kid loves apples. Will eat apples all the time. But he will not do discrete trials for apples. Discrete trials is another evidence-based practice. He will sit there and do nothing. And when we're looking at behavior, that is not what we want to see, because sitting there and doing nothing, there is no behavior to register at all. So we have to get the kids to do something. And that's where I'm not really necessarily one of those teachers that feels, oh, he was bad today or he had a bad day, because guess what? At least I got some type of behavior from him. At least I have some type of data that I'm able to register and I'm able to make a plan. Because when a kid sits there and does absolutely nothing, that in itself is incredibly hard, because those are very passive learners and they're very hard to motivate. Getting them to do something is really incredibly difficult, because there's very few things that they want. They have such a narrow range of interests, which sitting down and doing nothing is one of them. So making sure that we're reinforcing often, and that it actually is reinforcing is what I want you to take from that. If you have any questions about that and how to do reinforcement, because it's big, feel free to add me onto Facebook. You can ask me questions. I will actually respond back to you, because I'm here for information and I'm looking forward to connecting with you. I'm glad that I had the opportunity to participate in Parents Reaching Out. It was such an amazing experience for me, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you in the future. Thank you. Take care.